The Zephyrian warship, Crimson Talon, drifted through the void like a predator stalking its prey. Captain Vextar stood on the bridge, his forearms crossed behind his back as he watched the human vessel limp through space. The small Earth reconnaissance ship had been damaged in their ambush 3 cycles ago, and now it was finally within their grasp. "Prepare the boarding pods," Vextar commanded, his mandibles clicking with satisfaction. The Galactic Council had been searching for live human specimens for months. These strange bipedal creatures had appeared in their sector without warning, claiming to be from a planet called Earth. Their technology was primitive, their ships small and weak, yet something about them made the Council nervous. The boarding was swift and brutal. Zephyrian shock troops poured through the breached hull of the human ship, expecting to find cowering civilians or perhaps a few frightened soldiers. Instead, they found carnage. Bodies of the human crew lay scattered throughout the corridors, but these weren't the bodies of victims. They were warriors who had fought to their last breath. Scorch marks covered the walls, and several Zephyrian soldiers had to step over the remains of their own advanced scouts who had somehow been killed by the supposedly inferior humans. In the ship's command center, they found him. A single human male, unconscious and bleeding from a head wound, slumped over what appeared to be some kind of communications console. His clothing was unlike anything they had seen before. Dark, form-fitting material that seemed designed for stealth and combat. Strange markings adorned his uniform, symbols that meant nothing to the Zephyrian soldiers, but would have struck fear into the hearts of any human who recognized them. "This one's still alive," reported Sergeant Crixavan, prodding the unconscious human with his plasma rifle. "Should we eliminate him?" Vexatar approached the fallen warrior, studying the strange creature with interest. The human was smaller than a Zephyrian, lacking their natural armor plating and extra limbs, yet somehow this fragile-looking being and his crew had managed to kill 17 of Vextar's best soldiers before being overwhelmed. "No," the captain decided. "The Council wants live specimens. Secure him and prepare him for interrogation. I want to know what makes these humans so troublesome." The human was dragged unconscious to the ship's detention level, placed in a cell designed to hold the most dangerous prisoners in the galaxy. Energy barriers hummed to life, and automated defense systems tracked his every movement. The Zephyrians had learned to be careful with their captives after several embarrassing incidents involving escaped prisoners who had somehow turned their own technology against them. When the human finally awakened, he showed no fear. This surprised the guards who had been watching him. Most species, when faced with the reality of capture by the Zephyrian Empire, would cower or beg or attempt to bargain for their lives. Instead, the human simply sat up, assessed his surroundings with cold, calculating eyes, and then settled into a meditation-like state. For 3 days, the human said nothing. Interrogation specialists tried everything from psychological pressure to mild torture, but the creature remained silent. He ate the food they provided without complaint, exercised in his cell with a discipline that impressed even his captors, and watched their every move with an intensity that made veteran soldiers uncomfortable. Dr. Yilmoth, the ship's chief interrogator, was fascinated by their prisoner. In her long career, she had broken the minds of countless rebels, spies, and prisoners of war. Yet this human seemed almost immune to her techniques. When she attempted to probe his mind with psychic intrusion, she encountered barriers that shouldn't have existed in such a primitive species. "What are you?" she finally asked during one session, her frustration evident in the rapid clicking of her mandibles. The human looked at her for a long moment, as if considering whether to answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm and measured, carrying an accent that the ship's translation systems couldn't quite identify. "Chief Petty Officer Marcus Kane," he said simply. "United States Navy, service number 447-92853. "That tells me nothing," Dr. Yilmoth hissed. What is your mission? Why were you in our territory? Kane's lips curved into something that might have been a smile, but there was no warmth in it. Name, rank, and service number. That's all you get. What the Zephyrians didn't know was that they hadn't captured just any human soldier. Marcus Kane was a Navy SEAL, one of Earth's most elite special operations warriors. He had been part of a deep reconnaissance mission when his ship was attacked. And while his crewmates had fought bravely, Kane had made a different choice. He had allowed himself to be captured, but not because he had given up. Kane was gathering intelligence. The days blended together aboard the Zephyrian warship as it traveled toward the Empire's main interrogation facility on Keth Prime. Kane used every moment to study his captors, memorizing guard rotations, ship layouts, and security protocols. His SEAL training had prepared him for this kind of situation, though he doubted his instructors had ever imagined he'd be imprisoned by alien creatures with 4 arms and mandibles. What bothered him most wasn't his capture, or even the threat of torture. It was the silence from Earth. His reconnaissance mission had uncovered something that Command needed to know immediately. The Galactic Council wasn't just aware of humanity's expansion into space, they were actively planning to eliminate what they saw as a potential threat. The Zephyrians made their first mistake on the 7th day of his captivity. During a routine cell inspection, one of the younger guards left his sidearm within reach while checking the energy barrier controls. It was only for a moment, but a moment was all Kane needed. In one fluid motion, he grabbed the weapon through the barrier's temporary gap and pointed it at the guard's thorax. "Step back," Kane said calmly in the broken Zephyrian he had picked up from listening to his captors. The guard's mandibles chattered in fear, and he raised his 4 arms in surrender. His partner reached for the alarm, but Kane shifted his aim slightly. Don't. What happened next would be discussed in Zephyrian military academies for generations to come. Instead of trying to escape or kill his captors, the human did something completely unexpected. He handed the weapon back. "Just wanted to make sure it worked," Kane said with that cold smile again. The incident sent shockwaves through the ship's command structure. How had a primitive human managed to disarm a trained Zephyrian soldier? The security footage was analyzed frame by frame, but even then, the guards couldn't understand how someone could move that fast. Captain Vexitar decided to speak with the prisoner personally. "You could have escaped," the captain said, studying Kane through the energy barrier. "Why didn't you?" Kane looked up from his meditation pose. "Where would I go? We're in space, on your ship, surrounded by your people. Escape isn't the objective right now." "Then what is your objective, human?" Kane's eyes met Vextar's, and for a moment, the Zephyrian captain felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Genuine unease. "Understanding," Kane said simply. That evening, as the ship continued its journey toward Keth Prime, Kane made his move. Not to escape, but to send a message. Using techniques learned from years of covert operations, he had been slowly loosening a panel in his cell's wall. The energy barrier detected movement and life signs, but it wasn't designed to monitor structural modifications made with infinite patience and surgical precision. When he finally accessed the ship's internal communication array, Kane worked quickly. His fingers flew over the alien controls as he uploaded a data package he had been composing in his head for days. Everything he had observed about Zephyrian technology, their military structure, their weaknesses, and most importantly, their plans for Earth. The message was transmitted in a burst so brief and so perfectly timed with the ship's routine communications that it appeared to be nothing more than a navigation update. By the time the Zephyrian technicians realized what had happened, the signal was already racing through hyperspace toward Earth. But Kane wasn't done. As alarms began blaring throughout the ship and security teams rushed toward his cell, he activated one final protocol. Using the ship's own communication system, he broadcast a single word on all frequencies. a word that would soon echo across every military installation in the Zephyrian Empire. Reaper. It meant nothing to the Zephyrians, just another human sound without context. But for Kane, it wasn't just a call sign or a code word. It was a promise. The security team found him sitting calmly in his cell, hands behind his head, with no sign of how he had managed to access their secure systems. The loosened panel had been carefully restored, and there was no physical evidence of tampering. "Impossible," Dr. Yilmoth muttered as she reviewed the security footage. The energy barriers were never breached. The cell's structural integrity shows no compromise. How did he— He didn't, Captain Vextar interrupted, but his voice carried uncertainty. Humans are primitive. They lack the technology to interface with our systems. It must have been a malfunction. But even as he said the words, Vextar knew he was lying to himself. Deep in his warrior's instincts, he recognized what he was seeing. This wasn't a frightened prisoner or even a skilled soldier trying to escape. This was a predator in enemy territory, and he was hunting. The message Kane had sent contained more than just intelligence about Zephyrian capabilities. Hidden within the data stream, encoded in ways that only Earth's military computers could decrypt, was a detailed plan, not for rescue, but for something far more ambitious. Kane hadn't been captured at all. He had infiltrated the enemy fleet. The interrogation facility on Keth Prime was designed to break the strongest minds in the galaxy. Built into the hollow core of an asteroid, it contained cells and torture chambers that had extracted secrets from every known species. The Zephyrian Empire took pride in the fact that no prisoner had ever escaped from Keth Prime, and none had ever remained silent for more than 30 standard cycles. Kane was transferred there under maximum security, but he wasn't alone anymore. Word of the Reaper transmission had spread through military channels faster than the Zephyrian leadership could suppress it. Intelligence analysts across the Empire worked frantically to decode the meaning of the single-word broadcast from their own warship, but they found nothing. What they didn't realize was that the message wasn't meant for them. 3 days after Kane's arrival at Keth Prime, the first sign appeared. A Zephyrian patrol vessel on the outer edge of the system simply vanished. One moment it was there on sensors, the next it was gone. No distress signal, no wreckage, no explanation. The facility's commander, General Thaxmore, assumed it was a technical malfunction until a second patrol disappeared 6 hours later. Then a third. "Sir," reported the communications officer, his voice trembling slightly, "we're receiving reports from across the sector. Patrol ships, communication relays, supply convoys, they're all going dark. Whatever's happening, it's spreading." General Thaxmore's mandibles clicked nervously. "Pirates? Rebels?" "Unknown, sir. There's been no communication from any of the missing vessels. They just disappear." In his cell, deep within the asteroid, Kane continued his routine. Exercise, meditation, careful observation of guard patterns. To his captors, he appeared to be adapting to imprisonment with the resignation of a defeated soldier. They had no idea he was counting down. The breakthrough came during Kane's 15th day on Keth Prime, when Dr. Yilmoth attempted a deeper psychic probe. She had been preparing for weeks, gathering the most powerful mind-reading equipment in the Empire's arsenal. What she found when she touched Kane's consciousness nearly shattered her own mind. Images flooded through the psychic connection, but not Kane's memories. These were visions of Earth's military preparations, of massive fleets being assembled in secret, of weapon systems that defied everything the Council understood about human technology. But more terrifying than the ships and weapons were the soldiers. Thousands of them, all carrying the same cold intensity she saw in Kane's eyes. All marked with the same symbols, the same training, the same absolute dedication to their mission, and all of them were coming. Dr. Yilmoth pulled back from the probe, gasping and shaking. "General," she whispered into her communicator, "we need to evacuate this facility immediately." "What did you see?" Thaxmore demanded. "Not what," she replied, her voice barely controlled. "Who? There are more of them. Many more. And they know where we are." The general's laughter was harsh and dismissive. "Impossible. The human homeworld is months away from here, and their ships are primitive. Even if they sent a rescue mission the moment this creature was captured, they couldn't reach us for—" His words were cut off by an explosion that shook the entire asteroid. Emergency lighting bathed the facility in red as alarms screamed throughout the corridors. On the command deck, tactical displays showed the impossible. A fleet of unknown ships had appeared at the edge of the system, moving with precision and speed that exceeded anything in Zephyrian databases. "Where did they come from?" Thaxmore roared. "Sensor records show they just appeared, sir. No hyperspace signatures, no approach vectors. They're just there." The lead ship in the attacking fleet was unlike anything the Zephyrians had ever encountered. Sleek and black, it moved through space like a living thing, its weapons systems charging with an energy signature that made their instruments scream warnings. On the bridge of that ship, Commander Sarah Chen checked her tactical display one final time. Around her, the crew of the stealth destroyer Nemesis worked with quiet efficiency. Like Kane, they were all special operations personnel, but where he was a SEAL, they were something newer, part of Earth's recently formed Deep Space Warfare Division. "Target confirmed," reported her weapons officer. "Keth Prime facility. Coordinates match the Reaper's transmission exactly." "Any word from our operative?" "Negative, ma'am. But if Chief Kane is alive, he'll be in the maximum security section." Chen nodded grimly. The mission parameters were clear. Extract Kane and gather intelligence on Zephyrian capabilities. The fact that they had managed to reach this facility without detection was proof that Earth's new stealth technology was working better than even the optimists had hoped. "All ships, commence Operation Thunderbolt. Primary objective is extraction. Secondary objective is demonstration." The word demonstration carried weight among the human fleet. The Galactic Council had made it clear they viewed humanity as a primitive species to be contained or eliminated. It was time to correct that misconception. The attack began with surgical precision. Human ships phased in and out of stealth mode, striking Zephyrian defensive positions before vanishing again. Each strike was calculated not just for tactical effect, but for psychological impact. The Empire's warriors had never faced an enemy that could appear and disappear at will, striking from impossible angles before melting back into the void. Inside Keth Prime, Kane felt the vibrations of the first explosions through the asteroid's rock. His countdown had reached 0. A guard rushed past his cell, shouting orders in panicked Zephyrian. Kane stood and walked to the energy barrier, placing his hand against the humming force field. "You might want to surrender," he said quietly to the empty corridor. "The cavalry's here, and they don't take prisoners." The words were picked up by security sensors and transmitted throughout the facility. In the command center, General Thaxmore heard them and felt ice in his veins. The humans had come for their lost soldier, and they had brought hell with them. The final assault on Keth Prime would be remembered as the moment the galaxy learned to fear humanity. Commander Chen's strike team moved through the asteroid facility like ghosts made of steel and vengeance. Their powered armor was a generation ahead of anything the Zephyrians had encountered, incorporating stealth technology that made them nearly invisible to enemy sensors. But it wasn't just their equipment that gave them an advantage. It was their training, their coordination, and their absolute refusal to accept defeat. The Zephyrian defenders had been preparing for a conventional assault, expecting the humans to batter their way through the facility's defenses with brute force. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that struck from the shadows, eliminated targets with surgical precision, and disappeared before return fire could find them. Section 7 is compromised, reported one of Thaxmore's officers, his voice cracking with stress. The humans are moving through our defensive lines like they don't exist. The general stood before his tactical display, watching red indicators spread across the facility map like a plague. Each indicator represented a security checkpoint that had gone silent, a defensive position that had been neutralized, or a corridor that had been overrun by the advancing humans. "How many of them are there?" he demanded. "Intelligence estimates between 20 and 30 humans, sir." Thaxmore's mandibles clicked in disbelief. 30? We have over 1,000 soldiers in this facility. "Yes, sir. But they're not fighting like any enemy we've encountered. They seem to know our layout, our protocols, our weaknesses. It's as if they've been planning this assault for—" The officer's words were cut off as the lights went out. Emergency power kicked in a moment later, bathing the command center in crimson light, but the psychological effect was devastating. The humans had somehow accessed their main power grid and were systematically shutting down the facility's systems. Deep in the maximum security section, Kane heard the familiar sound of human weapons fire drawing closer. The guards who had been watching his cell had abandoned their posts minutes earlier, rushing to reinforce the upper levels. He was alone now, waiting in the red-tinged darkness. The energy barrier flickered and died as the facility's power grid continued to fail. Kane stepped out of his cell for the first time in weeks, moving with the fluid grace of a predator finally unleashed. He had memorized every corridor, every turn, every potential threat between his cell and the facility's communication center. As he moved through the darkened hallways, he encountered the aftermath of his rescuer's advance. Zephyrian soldiers lay unconscious or dead at their posts, taken down with an efficiency that spoke of overwhelming tactical superiority. Blast doors had been cut through with precision tools, security cameras had been systematically disabled, and emergency systems had been hacked or destroyed. Kane paused at one intersection, listening to the sounds of battle echoing from above. He recognized the distinct whine of human plasma rifles mixed with the heavier discharge of Zephyrian weapons. But there was something else in those sounds. Desperation from the defenders, controlled aggression from the attackers. His people were winning, and winning decisively. He found Commander Chen's team in the facility's central hub, where they had established a defensive perimeter around a bank of computer terminals. The woman in charge turned as he approached, her helmet's visor retracting to reveal a face marked by years of hard decisions and harder battles. "Chief Kane," she said simply, "good to see you mobile." "Ma'am, status?" "Facility is secured, intelligence is being downloaded, and your data packet has given us everything we need to know about their fleet dispositions. Mission accomplished." She paused, studying him with professional assessment. "You look like hell, Chief." Kane managed a genuine smile for the first time in weeks. "Nothing a hot shower and a good meal won't fix, ma'am." Around them, the other members of the strike team continued their work with mechanical efficiency. Computer systems were being stripped of data, communication arrays were being reprogrammed, and security protocols were being rewritten. When they left Keth Prime, the facility would be intact, but completely compromised. "Chen to Fleet Command," the commander spoke into her comm unit. "Package recovered, intelligence gathered, ready for Phase 2. The response came back immediately. "Confirmed, Nemesis. Phase 2 is authorized. Show them what happens when they threaten Earth." What followed would be discussed in military academies across the galaxy for centuries to come. Instead of simply withdrawing after their successful rescue mission, the human fleet began a systematic demonstration of their capabilities. Zephyrian reinforcements arriving to retake Keth Prime found themselves facing an enemy that could appear anywhere, strike with devastating precision, and vanish before effective counterattacks could be launched. Ship after ship was disabled. Their crews left alive, but their vessels crippled. Communication relays were destroyed, supply depots were eliminated, and military installations throughout the sector were systematically neutralized. The message was clear. This wasn't a desperate rescue mission. It was a preview of what Earth could do when properly motivated. General Thaxmore, now a prisoner aboard his own command vessel, found himself face to face with Commander Chen as human technicians stripped his ship's computers of classified information. "Why?" he asked, his forearms shackled behind his back. "We could have negotiated. The Council could have found a peaceful solution." Chen looked at him with the same cold intensity that Kane had shown throughout his imprisonment. "You attacked our reconnaissance vessel. You tortured our people. You planned to eliminate our entire species." She leaned forward slightly. "Did you really think we wouldn't respond?" "But you're primitives," Thaxmore protested. "Your technology is centuries behind ours. Your ships are small and weak. How did you—" "Adapt," Chen finished for him. "It's what humans do. We study our enemies, we learn their weaknesses, and we develop solutions. Your mistake was assuming that primitive meant helpless." As the human fleet prepared to depart, they left behind more than just physical destruction. Every communication relay, every computer terminal, every data storage device in the sector now carried the same simple message, broadcast on all frequencies in every language known to the Galactic Council. The species designation human has been reclassified. Previous assessments of technological and military capabilities have been determined to be severely inadequate. Any hostile action against Earth or its interests will result in immediate and overwhelming retaliation. This message is brought to you by Chief Petty Officer Marcus Kane, callsign Reaper, and the crew of Earth's Deep Space Warfare Division. We hope you have a nice day. The message was signed with coordinates. Not to Earth, but to empty space where a massive human fleet had briefly appeared on long-range sensors before vanishing again into the void. The implications were staggering. If humans could field a rescue force of this capability, what could they do with their main battle fleet? As Kane settled into a clean bunk aboard the Nemesis, he reflected on the mission's success. His capture hadn't been part of the original plan, but it had provided Earth with intelligence that would prove invaluable in the coming conflicts. More importantly, it had demonstrated to the galaxy that humans weren't the primitive species the Council had assumed them to be. The word Reaper would soon become known throughout Zephyrian space, not as a single soldier's call sign, but as a symbol of humanity's refusal to be intimidated or eliminated. And in the depths of space, Earth's fleets continued their expansion, carrying with them the knowledge that sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one you underestimate. The galaxy had heard the name Reaper for the first time, but it wouldn't be the last. Humanity had announced its presence among the stars, and that announcement had been written in fire across a dozen star systems. The age of humanity's quiet expansion was over. The age of human dominance had begun.